Release That Witch. Episode 81, Gunnery Training. Every day this training went on for 2 or 3 hours, and afterward Vanner had to go back to the city wall and return to his old trade. The fellow in his dormitory who had signed up for the musket team now stood behind him with a brand new musket, showing off without end. If discipline did not forbid brawling, Vanner would have loved to sew that mouth shut. But he had also noticed something off.
The lads who joined the musket team, how many days have they even trained? And they're already honing their shots in real fights against demonic beasts. And us, the artillery, we haven't fired a single shot. Besides, a cannon that heavy could never be hauled up onto the wall. Look at the wall top. 2 men standing abreast just about fill the walkway. Everyone's used to running on the sloped ramp on the inner side steep. Sure, but better than blocking a comrade's spear thrust. As for a cannon, its 2 wheels alone are wider than the wall top, and it has to fire downward too. No matter how I look at it, it's not practical up there. Unless this thing isn't meant for demonic beasts at all?
The exercises that followed confirmed Vanner's guess. Iron Axe led the 4 gun crews to the riverside. There Vanner saw that, at some point, an enormous boat had appeared in the Redwater River. No, he wasn't even sure it was a boat. Its shell looked no different from the stone used to build the city wall, wide and stubby. And apart from 2 bare masts, where was anything boat-like about it? Vanner's crew fell to arguing over it.
It's obviously a floating bridge. I went with the ore barges to Longsong Stronghold once I've seen the world. A deck several jang wide is clearly for stability. I've traveled north and south, seen plenty. If it were a boat, how would it move without wind? This river flooded once, years back, and smashed a wooden bridge that had stood in the stronghold for over a decade. The townsfolk replaced it with a floating bridge, wide planks nailed onto flat skiffs, chained into a row with iron cable. Walk it however you like, steady as land.
The farthest you've ever been is Longsong Stronghold, and you call that travelling the world? If it's a floating bridge, why does it need 2 masts? Afraid the wind won't blow it away?
And look at the stern, isn't that a rudder lying crosswise? A floating bridge has no use for that. Besides, that wooden frame amidships looks exactly like the makings of a shed, just unfinished. It's a ship, no doubt about it.
Rodney sneered, and Nelson chimed in. The 2 brothers had always spoken with one voice. Vanner didn't much care whether it was a ship or not. He only cared what the next training would be. The answer came quickly. Iron Axe ordered them to drive the horses, hauling the gun carriage onto the little town. Yes, that was the boat's name, bestowed by His Highness himself. At Iron Axe's introduction, Pomelo's face went stiff while the 2 brothers preened. Then they were to lash the cannon's wheels to the reserved arresting bars. There were 2 sets of these arresting bars, 4 to a set, laid fore and aft along the deck's centerline. Clearly, it could carry 2 cannon at a time.
Well, now it's certain what we're meant to fight is no demonic beast. The Redwater flows from north to south, and there's no river this wide in the misty forest.
The first time he stepped onto the deck, Vanner at once felt its remarkable stability. The river flowed along the hull, and the stone ship did not stir at all. It was like standing on solid ground. Only when the horses were driven aboard could a slight sway be felt. He also noticed that whenever a crew finished a round of embarking and disembarking practice, Iron Axe recorded the time beside them. Thinking of the arresting bars on the deck, it seemed only 2 of the 4 crews would be put to use. Vanner secretly passed this news to his crewmates, and everyone instantly summoned every ounce of strength, pouring 10/10ths of effort into each step. To be kicked back into the spear company for losing would be a small embarrassment. Losing the raise in pay would be a disaster. On the 7th day, Vanner finally welcomed the long-awaited live firing practice. And on this day, His Highness the Prince came in person to watch the gun crews at work. Not one man of the 4 crews failed to hold his chest high, walking with vigor in every step. Since everyone had drilled the loading sequence to familiarity, the first shot soon went off from Vanner's crew, firing first. It was his first time witnessing the cannon's power. Amid a deafening roar, an iron ball twice the size of a fist fell on the snowfield over 500 meters away. flinging up a great sheet of snow and mud, then bouncing onward far beyond. His naked eye could not catch the ball's flight at all.
Thrilling and a little frightening. How exactly does His Highness make such dreadful weapons? If I ever faced a cannon's attack, even full plate armor would be no use at all.
After each crew fired its round, the prince had a flag thrust into the spot where the ball had first landed and cut a length of hemp rope from flag to muzzle. When 4 rounds were done and it came to Vanna's crew again, he heard the order to change the elevation. Where the barrel met the carriage on either side, there was a graduated dial, marked with 5 scales: 0, 5, 10, 25, 30. No one quite knew what it meant, but you followed the order.
Elevation 5.
Pomelo, the strongest of them, at once braced the sponge rod under the powder chamber of the barrel and pried the gun up from the rear. Vanna turned the screw on the carriage until the first white line sank into the hole, and only then did Pomelo release the rod. The breech settled back slightly lower than before, the muzzle tilting upward, the indicator resting exactly on the 5. Then another 4 rounds of firing, flag planting, rope cutting, and adjusting the elevation. Gradually, Vanna came to see what His Highness was doing.
He's collecting the distance of every shot, and the higher the muzzle points, the farther the ball lands. I know that well from shooting a bow. Loose upward and the arrow flies far. Shoot flat and it soon falls to earth. Never thought a cannon worked the same, only so much faster that it flies so much farther. Wait, what if the ball were fast enough? Would it just never come down?
Meanwhile, by the Redwater River, the trial voyage of the little town was also pressing ahead at full steam. Since Wendy was to serve as its power, everyone aboard had to be absolutely reliable, so Roland picked a batch of politically sound hands as the little town's first crew. The captain and commander was Chief Knight Carter. The helmsman was Brian. Raising and lowering the sails fell to Carter's squires. The signalman was Tigu Pine. These men dealt with witches often, and with Roland's own quiet, steady work on their thinking, they no longer held any prejudice against witches. Tigu, most of all, loving his daughter as he did, he had extended that care to the whole community of witches. Release That Witch, Episode 82, The Maiden Voyage of the Little Town. As the only professional with seafaring experience, Lightning took up the post of navigator without hesitation. Truth be told, she was full of curiosity about this oddly shaped, strangely built barge. Crude as it looked, it had every part a ship should have, though whether it could actually move, even she could not say. After all, at sea she had mostly been a spectator. Her father had always refused her pleas to take the helm or raise the sails herself. Following the tradition for a new ship's first voyage, Lightning smashed a jar of ale against the bow, then gave the order to hoist the sails. And Carter, as commander, was unwilling to let a little girl steal his place, so whenever she shouted an order, the knight would always repeat the same command after her. The little town's sails were sewn from animal hides, mostly cowhide and sheepskin, mixed with border town specialties like wolf and bear. The result was a patchwork of browns, whites, and greys, like a rag covered in men's. The sails were trapezoid in shape, divided by 4 wooden battens. Lines ran through iron rings at the mast tops and dropped to the deck. One pull on a line, and the whole sail rose. To keep handling as simple as possible, both of the little town sails were single sails, parallel to each other and square to the center line. On an ordinary 2-masted sailboat, such a rig would leave one sail starved of wind, nearly useless. But with Wendy's power over wind, the design instead spread the push evenly on both sides of the center line and made the helmsman's job easier. When the sails were up, Lightning had the workers on land cast off the hemp ropes. The weather was fair enough, snowflakes drifting down now and then. Pushed by the breeze and the current, the ship slowly left the bank. The little girl dropped down beside Brian and shouted,
"Hard to starboard."
Hard to starboard.
What does hard to starboard mean? Spin it right a few turns?
No, turn left all the way. Ugh, forget it. I'll do it myself.
Lightning pressed a hand to her forehead. She had forgotten this crew had never handled a sailboat in their lives, and didn't know what the most basic commands meant. On a standard two-master, they'd probably still be fumbling with the sails. That fewer than 10 people had gotten a stone ship off the bank at all spoke to how clever the little town's design really was. She gripped the handles of the rudder wheel taller than she was and spun it to one side, feet off the ground. The great crosswise wheel was heavy work for any ordinary woman, with no mechanical help. Turning it meant fighting the water's resistance against the whole iron rudder blade beneath the hull. But for Lightning, who could fly, none of that was a problem. She noticed a stop plate set under the rudder post to keep it from overturning, and felt a flicker of curiosity. They said His Highness had designed this ship single-handed. How did he know even details like this? Even lifelong sailors didn't necessarily know the structure of every part of a ship.
Sister Wendy, make the wind.
Standing on the shed roof, Wendy didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So that was why His Highness had asked if she was afraid of heights. Using her to push the sailboat? Thinking of her usual jobs, air-drying meat, blow-drying clothes, she suddenly felt a strange sense of contrast. She spread her arms and entered the state of her daily practice, letting the wind blow evenly from beneath her feet and above her head, keeping the force on the two sails as equal as she could. Truth be told, Wendy had never imagined that this seemingly simple demand would be so hard to perform. Though she had awakened as a witch 15 years ago, she had never tried to deeply understand and master her power. Summoning a rapid current to wrap a stone and strike an enemy, or a gust to sweep one away, those were all single bursts of magic released at once. And for the chores around camp, stronger or weaker wind both did, so long as the job got done. Remembering Anna's earnest look in practice, Wendy suddenly felt a little ashamed.
The first thing you must do is practice your power again and again until you master it completely, just like Anna. So that wasn't just a stock phrase. Then let me start from today.
She drew a deep breath and gathered all her attention into the feel of the wind. Though the wind was not perfectly even, the sails bellied out all the same. The ceaseless thrust made the masts creak and groan, and the bow began to swing to the right.
It actually moves?
His Highness made a ship out of stone and set it afloat on the water. Tell me, is there anything he can't do?
The little town drew farther and farther from the bank, sailing gradually into the middle of the channel. Wendy could only make wind out of nothing. She could not banish the north wind that already blew. Under the two forces, the ship's course was no straight line, and the rudder had to correct it. This Lightning could not explain in words. Brian had to feel it for himself. To teach him quickly, she first had him make a few hard turns to feel how the wheel's angle matched the swing of the bow, then moved on to finer adjustments. After sailing the red water for more than half an hour, Wendy was the first to give out. Not her magic, her body had reached its limit. Even wrapped up like a dumpling, she could not fully keep out the freezing wind. A thin layer of snow had gathered on her cotton hat. Her hands and feet were going numb with cold. She swayed where she stood on the roof. If Lightning hadn't noticed something wrong while cruising overhead, Wendy might have held on until she fainted. Lightning swooped to Wendy's side at once, gripped her tight, and shouted for Brian to make for shore. He spun the wheel hard to the right, and the bow slowly swung left. Lightning carried Wendy down. On the deck, her wind could reach only one sail, but at least they were out of the biting cold, so her body heat would not drain away so fast. Besides, bringing a ship in took fine control, and Lightning dared not hand that to a novice who had just learned the helm, though she was not much of an old hand herself. After much ado, the little town finally came alongside. The instant she touched the bank, every heart leapt. The hull gave a dull thud, but thankfully seemed unharmed. The party quickly gathered in the sails, laid out a gangplank, and went ashore. The one mercy was that, on this trial run, they had not sailed a single straight course, but had practiced turning back and forth where the channel was wide, so the little town had never strayed far from where she started. Lightning flew straight for the castle with Wendy on her back. Carter gazed at the stone ship and sighed. Without a witch's help, they would never get her back to the docks. Release That Witch. Episode 83. The Northern Carter. For most folk of the north, winter was a season without harvest, especially in the towns near the Hermes Plateau. The months of demons brought not only endless rain and snow, but bitter cold, hunger, and death. But Pegleg White was different. Every winter, the church's messenger would come to his door and hire him to drive a few trips to the border of the kingdom of Wolfheart, picking up suffering orphans and carrying them to the old holy city.
And a fine bargain it is, near 20 silver wolves a trip, and a virtuous good deed besides. This year's months of demons are almost over, so this load should be the last.
My lord, why not sit inside the carriage? This snow will keep falling for a good while yet. You're not like us, eating wind and drinking snow every day, mind you. Don't freeze.
It's nothing. The new holy city is far colder than this. Up on the plateau, neither leather nor armor keeps out the chill. It's like a devil that seeps into every part of your body. Without cold-repelling pills, that place is no place for ordinary folk.
The messenger pulled out a flask and took a swig.
As you say, my lord, I've never been to the new holy city, and I don't care to go. What's to see in a place of nothing but ice and demonic beasts?
White nodded again and again. As an experienced carter, he could always find a fresh topic, and this messenger was far easier to talk to than the last one.
Those gloves of yours, my lord, made from the special wolfskin of Grey Castle's western region, aren't they?
Oh? You can tell?
My lord, I've been at this trade near 30 years. First I drove for a baron, then for a countess. I even drove the little princess of Wolfheart once. If an accident hadn't broken my leg, I might still be at the count's manor today. They had nothing in such plenty as gold dragons' furs and silverware of Grey Castle, jewels of Everwinter, crafts of the fjords once aboard. They'd talk your ears off about it all.
I see. And that's where your nickname comes from? What kind of accident?
Ah, a riot of refugees. Those villains would do anything for a bite of food. They surrounded the carriage. To protect the countess, I had to whip the horses into a gallop. The horses took fright, threw me off, and the carriage overturned.
And so your leg broke? What of the countess?
Better off than me. The carriage had soft cushions and thick quilts. She only came out black and blue. She climbed out and ran, leaving me on the road. I dragged my broken leg home and spent all my savings on this peg.
He knocked on the copper rod, showing below his trouser leg.
And then the count's manor threw me out on the excuse that I couldn't drive anymore. Those damned nobles!
A pity, truly. But the gods did not abandon you. Now you drive for the church. Heaven is merciful.
Yes, my lord. Heaven is merciful. No. If heaven were truly merciful, it would never have let that happen to me. When I needed it most, it did not save me.
Just then, a girl's crying came from inside the carriage.
Hold up a moment.
White drew the reins tight and slowed the two horses to a stop. The messenger hopped down and walked around to the back of the carriage. Soon, the sound of a swinging whip rose from within.
Poor child. Bear it, he is your savior after all. Without the messenger, you wouldn't last this winter. You'd just be another unclaimed corpse in the street.
Before long, the messenger came back and climbed onto the shaft.
Drive on.
Sit tight, my lord. Gee up. Are they all from around the kingdom of Wolfheart?
More or less. The churches of every town in the kingdom take in some orphans in winter. When food and clothing run short, our intake multiplies several-fold. The church's friars alone can't cope, so we also commission the carriage companies to hire carters of good repute to help with the hauling. You've done well, White. My predecessor praised you highly.
It's my honor to take part in such good works. My lord, will they all be sent into convents? Forgive my boldness. They're orphans all, but their characters differ. Some are young in years, yet have done it all. Won't such ones pollute the holy ground?
The gods will judge, and even the guilty will have their chance of redemption.
Is that so? A fine thing indeed. It's getting late, my lord. Shall we spend the night at the next town? If the weather holds fair tomorrow, we should reach the old holy city by midday.
The messenger breathed out a puff of white air.
Find an inn one with a yard that can take the carriage, and go get them some food.
Right away.
This town lay on the only road from Wolfheart to the old holy city. White had been here many times and soon found the inn he always used. He drove the carriage into the yard, took the coins the messenger handed him, and went to buy food for the orphans. As always, sweet potato gruel was the right choice, cheap and not bad tasting. Watching them share out the gruel, White limped back to the inn, ordered buttered bread, and sat at the bar, gnawing at it. As for the messenger, he surely had better places to go. 10 years ago, before his leg broke, he would have gone to the tavern for a cup of wine and found someone for a few throws of dice. His luck had always been good back then. Now, White felt the money pouch at his chest. Better to turn in early. In the evening, he heard some stirring in the yard. Rising and lifting a corner of the curtain, White saw the drunken messenger unlock the carriage door and climb in. Soon he dragged 2 orphans out, and behind him stood 2 more men, dressed, by all appearances, as nobles. White let the curtain fall and went back to his warm bedding.
This isn't the first time I've seen such a thing. The last messenger did the same. Being alive is the greatest luck of all. Compared to a moment's pain, just bear it. When you reach the holy city, a brand new life awaits. In the convent at least, you needn't fear hunger or cold.
White yawned and fell into a heavy sleep. At first light, he took up the messenger and drove on. The road was smooth, and they reached the old holy city half an hour ahead of schedule. Church carriages were already waiting there, it seemed. The wretches had another stretch of road ahead, but that was no longer his concern.
Here's your pay.
The messenger tossed over a cloth bag. White took it, poured it into his palm, and counted twice. 20 silver wolves. Right enough. He nodded and bowed.
Hope to see you again next year.
The messenger didn't answer, waving him off. White noticed that, besides his own, several other carriages were doing the same work, perhaps sent from other kingdoms. But one thing struck him as strange. Those climbing down from the carriages all seemed to be little girls. When the church takes in orphans, does it take only girls? He shook his head, cast the questions from his mind, and drove off on the homeward road. Release That Witch. Episode 84. The Hermes Mechanism. Archbishop Mayne descended flight after flight of winding stairs, deeper and deeper into the earth. This was a natural sinkhole, deep enough to swallow 4 towers of the sky, and some 20-odd zang across a lord's castle would fit inside with room to spare. The shaft was not dark at first. Skylights pierced the high dome, and light slipped through the windows into the depths, leaving winding patches of brightness on the ice-cast stone walls. As the height dropped, the bright patches dimmed and soon melted into the stone. But from the pit's center, a faint blue light reflected. Clearer the deeper he went, even without a torch, he would not be lost in utter blackness. The stairs beneath his feet clung to the rock wall like a small snake coiling around the shaft. Each slab was cut from granite, rectangular, 3 fingers thick, wide enough for 2 men abreast one end embedded in the rock, the other hanging in empty air. Against falls, wooden rails stood along the hanging edge, linked by ropes. He had never counted how many steps there were, but he knew how bitterly each slab had been laid. The church's masons had hung from ropes, chiseled grooves deep enough into the hard rock, and wedged the slabs in one by one. Every motion had to be careful. More than 300 men had slipped or snapped their ropes and fallen to the pit's floor. If the Hermes Cathedral overhead was the symbol of the church's unyielding spirit, then the Hermes mechanism, hidden at the bottom of this shaft, was the church's true core. God's punishment stones were inlaid in the wall beside the stairs. Every 100 paces, a judgment warrior stood guard, and a unit of the God's punishment army waited within, ready to meet any intruder. Between the dome and the cathedral floor above were buried countless sandbags and rubble. If the holy city's defenses ever fell, and all had to withdraw, the Pope would spring the trap, and sand and stone would bury this place forever. Though this was not Mayne's first descent into the mechanism, walking in midair still made his head swim. Glancing down, he always had the illusion that he was falling. Only when his feet stood on solid ground did he let out a small breath of relief. The bottom of the pit was a huge disc-shaped white millstone. its surface smooth as a mirror standing on it. He could clearly see his own reflection. By the craftsman's clever design, the light from the domed skylights, refracted many times within the walls, converged exactly on this millstone at the bottom. Even without torches, the pit's floor was not wholly black. Only from the pit's floor would one discover that sunlight is not colorless. The millstone, lit, gave back a faint blue glow. Looking up, the whole shaft was kindled by that touch of blue into a cold, clear hue. Look closely, and in the brighter threads of light, countless dust motes were flying like the tiny living creatures recorded in the ancient books. Using the natural cavities in the mountain wall at the pit's bottom, the church had bored connections between them, enlarged them, and built the Hermes mechanism. Thanks to those holes leading every which way, the air here flowed freely, without the musty closeness one would expect deep underground. Maine stepped through the mechanism's gate, and the guard grew markedly tighter. Here, the Judgment Warriors stood in squads of 5, watching every checkpoint the church's most loyal soldiers. Once they accepted this duty, they would spend their whole lives within the mechanism, never to return to the surface. In fact, only he and the Pope could enter and leave the mechanism. Even Archbishops Heather and Tevin could not set foot here. Not even Maine knew how many forked paths the mechanism held. Besides this main passage running due south, branches ran off on both sides, and following them usually revealed still more branches. Some the church had put to use, others were simply sealed. He had heard that during the construction, several craftsmen strayed into the unmarked branches, lost their way inside, and never found the road back. The straight main passage ran deep into the mountain, with a checkpoint every 100 meters or so. Maine knew each stretch of the mechanism bore a different duty. The outermost was the living quarter, housing the warriors stationed below. The second was the archive, holding documents, fragments, and ancient tomes. The third was the prison, holding convicts who could never see the light of day, and the innocent. Past the third checkpoint, Maine stopped. Further on lay the mechanism's secret pivotal zone, source of all the church's research and inventions. Without the Pope's consent, even he could not go there unbidden. In his 3 years and more as Archbishop, he had entered it only once. Maine turned left into a side passage. The branch was short. Soon he reached its end. Seeing the Archbishop appear, the Judgment Warrior at the door struck his chest with a fist.
My lord.
Open the door.
Beyond the door ran a corridor, burning resin torches on its walls like countless dancing points of light in the dark, stretching down the walkway toward its end. Along both sides stood rows of thick wooden doors, each bearing a number plate in its middle. The Judgment Warrior raised his torch and led the way. As he walked, Maine watched the numbers change on the plates. When he saw the mottled plate marked with the number 35, he stopped, drew out a key, slid it into the lock, and turned it gently. The lock's click sounded harsh in the silence of the pit's depths, a faint echo coming from the corridor's end. As if it were a signal, wails rose behind many of the doors, men's and women's both. Listen closely, and most were pleas. "Let me out! Save me! I beg you, kill me!" Maine was unmoved. He ordered the warrior to stand watch at the door, stepped into the room, and closed the wooden door, shutting the tangled noise outside. Beyond the iron bars, the Archbishop saw an old man leaning against the head of the bed, or perhaps he was not old at all, though now his hair had gone white and wrinkles covered his forehead. His beard, long unshaved, nearly hung to his neck. From years without sunlight, his skin was a frightening pallor, his limbs thin as bamboo poles. Maine glanced at the meal box by the iron bars. The food inside was almost untouched. He sighed.
You should treat yourself better. The church does not lack for this much food. Your 3 meals are made to a king's standard, everything but wine. Even the fish is fine cod from Clearwater Port. You must know its taste well, Your Majesty Wimbledon.
Release That Witch. Episode 85. The Thorny Path. It was a moment before the old man reacted. Slowly, he drew back the quilt, shifted to the edge of the bed, and looked straight at the Archbishop.
If you were locked in this godforsaken place, would you be able to eat half a year, trapped here half a year, with no word of anything. How is my son and my daughters?
His voice was turbid and unclear, as if something blocked his throat. Mayne noticed that the walls were covered in scratch marks, as if gouged out by fingernails. Was that how the man counted his days? He moved over a stool and sat down, facing the king.
Must you ask about things that will only displease you?
I am of no more use to you. You've come to send me on my way, haven't you?
Yes.
Then what does a dying man care for, pleasant or unpleasant? Before I die, I only want to know how they are.
By the last sentence, Wimbledon's voice had nearly sunk to a growl.
He's finally lost his restraint. Then again, as a king, his bearing and grace have been more than sufficient. Replaced by the Blessed One and shipped toward Hermes, he tried many times to slip free on the road. Imprisoned here, he never sank into madness. He tried to bargain for his freedom. No cursing, no hysterical screaming, a rare thing in the mechanism's cells. If only the plan could be changed. I truly would hate to waste such a man on internal scheming. Perhaps my coming in person also holds the wish to tell him how things stand. Otherwise, a single command, and the Judgment Army would have ended his life for me. Your eldest son, Goron Wimbledon, is dead, sentenced to beheading by your second son, Typheco Wimbledon, on the charge of treason and regicide. Your third daughter, Garcia Wimbledon, has declared independence in the southern region and styled herself Queen of Clearwater. War with Typheco is now inevitable. As for your fourth son and fifth daughter, we have little news. Presumably, they are still alive.
What are you saying? Treason? Independence? What have you people done?
The royal decree of competition. Your children were dispatched to their territories with the declaration that whoever governed their land best would be the next king.
Wimbledon closed his eyes in pain. It was a long while before he spoke again, in a low voice.
Why? You struck on the day of prayer, dragged me into the partition, stripped me of my clothes and of the god's punishment stone. You used a witch to replace me with another man. You could have taken this kingdom slowly, raised churches in every town. Why issue such a thing as the decree? I could never have cough.
At the height of his agitation, Wimbledon hunched over in a violent fit of coughing.
I could never have issued an order that sets my children killing each other. Is that it? Perhaps you wouldn't have. But your children might not have done as you wished. They are grown with minds of their own. Take your third daughter, Garcia. She received Clearwater Port 5 years ago. Even without the decree, or had you simply died a natural death, would she have watched Goron ascend the throne without lifting a finger? And most importantly, we had no time for the slow road. You must have noticed, a witch's power is not permanent.
Damn you. What good does it do the church if they tear at each other? The churches would burn in the flames, the faithful would die in the war, the kingdom would fall into chaos. Wait, don't tell me you mean to.
A fiercer fit of coughing cut the king's words off. When at last he recovered, his voice was thin as gossamer, as if the coughing had spent all his strength.
You want to destroy the royal family.
Precisely. Though to be more accurate, royal power itself. Such keen judgment. Half a year in this lightless dungeon, to keep one's sanity is already a firm will, and those who can still think could be counted on one hand across the years. Royal power will hinder the church's growth. However weak it is, it will always grow slowly, like a seedling. Only by tearing it out by the roots can the church truly obtain this kingdom.
Wimbledon's face aged at once. Perhaps before he had only looked old. Now even his spirit declined, and the light in his eyes dimmed.
Grey Castle is the largest of the mainland kingdoms, rich in soldiers. A frontal war would not favor the church. We planned this for a long time. Your kingdom is bound to lose great numbers of warriors and mercenaries in the civil war. Let it last 2 or 3 years, and our Judgment Army can take all of Grey Castle with ease. You need not grieve too deeply. You will not be the only king to lose his realm. The other 3 will be the same. From now on, the mainland will no longer be divided among 4 kingdoms. Dawn, Wolfheart, Everwinter, and Grey Castle will all vanish. On this broad and fertile land, there will be only one power, the church.
Wimbledon fell silent. This man who had seized the throne from his brothers by force of arms now seemed drained of life. Even Mayne felt a trace of pity, but not a shred of regret. The church had paid much for this as well. Great numbers of outstanding believers had willingly become pieces in the game, throwing themselves into the design without thought for themselves. The one who had played Wimbledon III was a devout commander of the Judgment Army, firm in faith, absolutely loyal to the church, and due to receive the conversion ritual of the God's Punishment Army. Yet for the mission, he let a witch remake him in the king's likeness, and died without any honor in the bedchamber of Grey Castle's capital. He could have carved his name on the monument of Hermes Cathedral. Now, the church could only bury his name forever. Thinking Wimbledon would speak no more, Mayne drew a small porcelain vial from his bosom and was about to have him drink it when the king suddenly opened his mouth.
A curse. I curse you. I will be waiting for you in the depths of hell.
His voice grew fainter and fainter. Mayne had to strain his attention to make out the words.
Regrettably, this world has no hell, and even if it did, it would not belong to us. All that we do is for continuation. Only by uniting the four kingdoms can the church gather its greatest strength to defeat the true enemy. Otherwise...
The bishop stopped there. He saw that Wimbledon's hand had slipped down, strengthless. His head lolled to one side. The rise and fall of his chest had ceased entirely.
This is the end of a king and our brand new beginning.
Mayne put the vial back into his bosom, rose, and left. Pushing open the wooden door, he found the corridor utterly silent, as if the wailing had never sounded at all. He gave the judgment warrior at the door a few instructions for the aftermath, then walked toward the mechanism's exit without looking back. Release That Witch. Episode 86. The Witch's Choice. Leif did not know how she had endured these past days. The journey back from the barbarian land to the camp in the impassable mountains took her nearly half a month. To hide from demonic beasts, she concealed herself carefully inside stout tree trunks, and only when sure no beasts stirred nearby did she move on to the next hiding place. Anxious as fire, she had no other choice once spotted by a hybrid demonic beast. She could never have outrun its hunting by her own strength. More than a dozen sisters had fallen under the devil's slaughter. The other sisters' powers were no good for battle. When the iron-handed devil leapt into the crowd and began his butchery, they scattered and fled. How many had made it back to camp alive, Leif had no way of knowing. She dared not even think of that dreadful question. Hiding as she went was costly in magic. She could cover only a dozen li a day, especially with power held back for spending the nights. When her dry rations ran out, she turned wild fruits into things to eat and drink. The association's badge had long since lost its warmth. She could only wrap herself tighter in tree bark. Thinking of Snow, dead in that land before ever coming of age, Leif's tears slid down despite herself. Worse still, on the fourth night, the demonic bite came upon her inside a tree trunk. The chain of blows had nearly made her forget it. A tearing pain suddenly bloomed in her chest and spread swiftly through her whole body, nearly knocking her unconscious in an instant. She bit her tongue until her mouth was full of blood, forcing her spirit together to fight the agony. Under the torment of the demonic bite, Leif too had thought of giving up. But thinking of the 20-odd sisters who might have survived waiting for her return at camp, or lying wounded, needing her healing and her aid, she gritted her teeth and held on. Fortunately, this bite did not last long. When she struggled free of the ordeal, her whole body was covered in splits, and the blood that ran out had soaked the inside of the trunk. To keep the smell of blood from drawing demonic beasts, she had to endure the pain, strip off her clothes, and move to another great tree. Then she made the bare branches sprout green leaves and made the leaves into clothes against the cold. Guided by magic, the twigs became her needles, the veins of the leaves her thread. The whole way, she did not eat one bite of cooked food, nor drink one mouthful of hot water. After entering the impassable mountains, even with 2 more layers added to her leaf clothes and her hands and feet wrapped tight, the plunging cold and ankle-deep snow still frostbit her toes. Walking and stopping, dragging her senseless feet, she finally returned to the camp. Seeing the familiar figures of her sisters, Leif pitched headlong to the ground. When she came around, 2 days had passed. Overlong freezing had badly hurt her feet, and herbs could not stop the spreading gangrene. With no other choice, the sisters cut away 2 ruined toes from each of her feet. Leaf did not take it much to heart. To survive at all was good enough. Beside the sisters, who would never return, she was lucky indeed. But seeing the white bands wrapped around the arms of the living, a boundless grief surged up from her heart that she could not hold back. 42 sisters had set out. Now only 6 remained. After the others had comforted her, Scroll, the eldest among them, told Leaf of the party's ordeal. While Leaf had grappled with the devils, the witches without combat power had fled toward the camp. That very night, they met demonic beasts, a herd of boar kind. Powerless to resist, they could only scatter. Those hunted down by the beasts clearly met a grim fate, but the rest could spare no thought for that. By the next morning, a wolf-shaped hybrid had picked up their trail. Of those who escaped that time, only 8 remained. Thankfully, once inside the impassable mountains, the beasts gave up the chase. A few days after their return to camp, 2 sisters showed the signs of magic backlash one after another. Perhaps because the association's blow had been too heavy, the future too bleak, neither survived the demonic bite, and the fighting witches never came back. Just when all believed they had died at the devil's hands, Leaf returned, beyond all expectation.
Then, what of the others? Red Pepper, Windchaser, and the Mentor, how are they?
Leaf shook her head.
I'm the only one who survived. I see.
Scroll answered softly. Plainly, she had long expected this answer.
Then rest well. And Leaf, what is it? While you were unconscious, we talked it over. If Hakara doesn't come back, we hope you will take up the post of mentor.
Leaf stared blankly, then closed her eyes. Yes, after such a bitter blow, without choosing a new leader, the association would crumble at once. Yet the association's purpose was to find the Holy Mountain, to win freedom and a place of rest. Now the search had melted like bubbles. No, the Holy Mountain was itself a fraud. It did not exist in the impassable mountains, nor in the barbarian land. In that case, need the association exist at all? Her heart was in turmoil. Even without looking at them, she could feel the sisters' expectant gazes. They needed someone to step forward and lead the lost company onward. A long silence passed before Leaf opened her mouth.
Let's go find Nightingale.
What? Her? You mean go to Border Town? What if she's lying to us? Wendy is there too. Maybe she's long dead.
The sisters clamored over one another. Scroll clapped her hands to quiet them down and asked Leaf,
And if what Nightingale said is a fraud as well? You can wait somewhere safe, outside the town. Let me scout out the truth first. If what she said is a lie, I will take up the mentor's post. And if I die in the town scroll, you lead the sisters on. But
Leaf managed a faint smile.
I know your power isn't suited to battle, and doesn't help much with the camp's daily running either. But I understand now. Whether a power is strong has nothing to do with being fit to be mentor. The mentor is a guide, not the strongest of us. Pity I understood too late. If the association's mentor had been patient, careful Wendy, would the ending have been entirely different? You and Wendy were the first to join the association, and you're an elder among the sisters. You came with everyone from the east of the kingdom all the way to the impassable mountains. You're seasoned and prudent, and everyone has seen it. No one is better suited to be the sisters' mentor than you.
Scroll was silent for a moment.
And if everything Nightingale said is true, then the association need not exist anymore. Border Town will be our new holy mountain.
Release That Witch. Episode 87, Winter's Dusk, Part 1.
Ready. Thrust!
Vanna drove his spear out with all his strength, and his hands shook violently. The shaft creaked, near to splitting. A wolf-kind beast hung upon his spearhead, its fur bushy, blood-red eyes wide as copper bells. 2 rows of sharp teeth bared in its open mouth, the biggest of them the size of his thumb. It was his first time touching a demonic beast this close. Its claws flailed in the air, and splattered snowflakes even landed on his face. Vanna's mind went blank. Almost purely by the instincts ground in by training, he gripped the shaft tight and kept pushing forward. A single breath stretched endlessly long. He saw the shaft bend to its limit, the spearhead sinking deep into the beast's belly, and he truly thought that in the next moment, those sharp claws would tear open his face. With a crack, the shaft could bear the wolfkind's charge no longer and broke in 2. And it was that crisp sound that set time flowing again. The beast dropped. Just as it had come, its claws raked the parapet, scraping off a trail of fragments. And with half a spear shaft still in it, it crashed heavily off the city wall.
Musket team. Loaded. Fire at will.
2 musket barrels thrust out beside Vanna at once. He quickly stepped back half a pace and tilted his head up to keep the powder grains and burning gas out of his eyes. As for his ears, he couldn't spare a thought for them. The muskets soon finished their volley. Vanna moved back to the parapet and found a batch of all sorts of demonic beasts fallen at the foot of the wall. Someone poked him at his side. Turning his head, he saw his dormitory roommate grinning at him in triumph.
You've barely touched a musket for a week. What's there to be smug about? Wait until His Highness's artillery comes into play, and you'll realize that iron pipe of yours is nothing but a walking stick.
Captain, your spear catch. Have these beasts gone mad? It's been 2 or 3 hours, hasn't it?
Cat's Claw handed him a fresh wooden spear.
They were mad to begin with. What time is it now?
Almost midday. Hey, where's Pomelo? And the Rotney brothers?
Keep your eyes front. Do you want a wolfkind to gut you? They were assigned to other wall sections. Maybe crew 3, maybe crew 4. Come to think of it, how did you end up in crew 1?
I'm with the reserves. I go wherever I'm needed. An old uncle just got wounded, so it was my turn to step in.
Ready.
The hunter observer's voice cut Cat's Claw off. Vanna saw a dozen demonic beasts closing fast. By now, he could quickly tell the types apart. This wave had only 2 wolf kind. The rest were boar kind, fox kind, and 1 bear kind. No great threat to the wall.
Thrust.
Even so, he obeyed the order and thrust in unison with his teammates. This time, his spearhead met empty air as he drew the shaft back. From the corner of his eye, he saw the wolf kind already brought down by the other men of Crew 1. When the slower beasts gathered below the wall, the musket team squeezed in beside him again, firing down at will. These same fixed motions had repeated from daybreak until now. When the horn first sounded, most had still been asleep. Vanna yawned. This assault was fiercer than any before. The usual 1 or 2 waves had still not ended, and the corpses below the wall were nearly piling up. Midway, Militia 2 had relieved them once. They'd grabbed a hasty bite, rested a moment, then gone back up the wall. Yet, to his surprise, Vanna found himself calmer than he would have imagined. Thrust on the command, recover, leave the rest to the muskets, exactly as in daily practice. The rules and motions that had seemed so baffling at first were all proving their use now, and unbelievably effective. The others were much the same. Hands gripped their shafts tight, faces looked stern. Some of the reserves seemed plainly nervous, but everybody stood straight, and not one man took a step back.
But I know where our greatest confidence comes from. Not the day-after-day drills, His Highness. Whenever the muskets fire, I sneak a glance at the watchtower mid-wall. That's where the prince stands. He reached the wall the moment the horn sounded, and he stands on the same line as the rest of us. Even when I was rotated down to eat, he stayed atop the watchtower. The chief knight brought his breakfast up himself. And the last lord, every year when the months of demons came, he sailed away early. Then the nobles, the common folk, came last. Those with coin could pay a few silver wolves and leave by boat. Those without walked to Longsong Stronghold on their own 2 feet. Just thinking of that fills me with strength. We're the troops of the Prince of Greycastle, nothing like Border Town's old patrol. That lot bullied the old and new districts on the strength of their armor and blades and extorted any out-of-town merchant. Apart from the 2 patrol captains, they were no different from rogues. The militia is a mighty company under His Highness. We've kept even the dread demonic beasts outside the town, never advancing a step. Only Longsong Stronghold used to manage that. Look at Fishball, the famous coward of the old district, everyone's laughingstock. Since joining Militia 2, he handles a spear in proper form now. And Fermi, huge, always a beat slow, the old district's favorite butt of jokes. Now his thrusting routine is fast and vicious, slicker than most. I know that after training ends, he practices 100 extra thrusts, all because His Highness once told him himself. The clumsier the bird, the earlier it must take wing. Then it can catch the other's pace and in the end, overtake them. I joined for 2 eggs, at first. So why do I feel lucky now that I joined the militia? Every day brings small changes. Every day we go one step further than yesterday. I'm sure it's not just me, everyone feels it. I don't know how to put this feeling into words. Maybe it comes down to what His Highness always says at training. We are a company unlike any of this era.
2 short horn blasts woo woo, snapped Vanna alert. The warning that a hybrid demonic beast had appeared. He gazed into the distance. Another lion-headed winged hybrid, much like the one that had broken into the town last time. The second one today. But this time was different. Besides the musket team, they had other helpers now. Vanna turned his head slightly. In the corner of his eye, beside His Highness, a little girl with short golden hair was already floating in the air. Release That Witch. Episode 88, Winter's Dusk, Part 2.
Don't be in such a hurry, it hasn't come over yet.
Roland sighed, watching Lightning itch for action. Heaven knew why she was so keen on challenging demonic beasts. Plainly not the fighting type, yet without a trace of the fear ordinary folk should feel before such monsters.
We do it the same way as with the first one. Don't show off, you're just baiting it, keeping its attention fixed on you. And mind your altitude. It can't fly, but it's still a threat when it leaps.
I know. When the first one came, I had it all figured out. Relax, it won't even touch the corner of my clothes.
As they spoke, the hybrid demonic beast neared the wall, bounded across the obstacle field, and leapt sharply up an undefended stretch, flipping over the rampart. But this time, no militiaman paid it any heed. They stayed at their own sections, waiting for the hunter observer's next order to thrust.
Then, the special operation against the hybrid demonic beast begins now.
Roland said it in a deep voice. Lightning, already flown off, stopped in midair and looked back at him.
That line of yours, it's kinda weird. Forget it, I'm off.
Watching the little girl's figure speed away, Roland smiled in embarrassment and asked Anna and Nightingale behind him.
You think it was weird too?
The 2 of them nodded in unison.
Fine. So, Chuni lines are still Chuni, even in another world. You 2 go as well. Stay safe.
You too, Your Highness.
Nightingale bowed, then took Anna's hand and entered the mist. Roland stood with hands clasped behind his back, facing the wind, doing his best to look the part of a final boss. He knew many would secretly glance back at him in the lulls of battle, so though his feet were going numb, he stood at the highest point of the wall where everyone could see. At all times, the prince is with them. Since he could not fight in person, he could at least lift their hearts this way. This invasion had already surpassed the strength of any past attack. By Iron Axe's account, in former years only 1 or 2 hybrids appeared in a whole month of demons, but counting this one, Border Town had already met 4 this year. The duration was unusually long as well. Beasts kept emerging from the misty forest in batches of dozens, charging the wall without pause.
Good thing Flintlock output soared this last month, and the 100-man musket team is fully armed, otherwise we could never keep up this kill rate. With bows and crossbows, just restringing them would be a struggle by now. In a drawn-out fight, the musket's small drain on stamina shows its worth. Though the powder consumption is giving me a headache, I'm already thinking of ripping open those 20-odd packs of blasting charges in the warehouse and doling the powder out to the musket team.
On the other side, lightning had flown above the hybrid's head. She fished a stone from her pocket and threw it down. It landed squarely on the beast's skull. The sudden blow knocked it backward a step, and only then did it realize the attack had come from the sky. Lightning dropped her height provocatively, swept across its face, and flew close to the ground toward the town center. The hybrid had some power of thought, but the little girl before it was judged no threat. It pounced after her at once, wings spreading, gliding nearly 100 meters in a few bounds. Lightning pulled herself up at once, turned in mid-air, rounded a few low houses, and ducked into another street. Twisting and turning like this, she lured the enemy to the town's central square, the attack point she and Nightingale had agreed on. The lion-headed, winged hybrid had a keen sense of smell. Even Nightingale, hidden in the mist, would be discovered. So, before Nightingale and Anna struck, she had to hold the beast's attention as much as she could. And Lightning did it perfectly. The hybrid was now plainly hopping mad, its growing bestial frenzy drowning what little reason it had. Mouth gaping, it leapt at the air again and again, but Lightning, carrying nothing, was far nimbler than the beast, teasing it up and down, so every leap came up empty. Nightingale too had reached the square from another direction. Unlike Lightning, she ignored the houses and fences on the way while inside the mist, advancing in a perfectly straight line. Anna's flames had a reach of only 10 paces, 5 meters, so they had to approach from behind the tail to lower the chance of discovery. There had been quite a few slips dealing with the first hybrid, but by now Nightingale was wholly familiar with Anna's way of attacking. At 30 paces from the beast, she pushed her speed to the limit. The ground seemed to shrink in an instant. She crossed the remaining distance in almost a single stride, and by the time Anna came to her senses, the monster's tail was nearly touching her face.
Now.
The black and white world around Anna ebbed away like the tide. In a blink, she was back in the familiar town square. Green fire bloomed quietly at her fingertips, then swelled into a giant cage of flame, hooding the beast inside. Nightingale retreated at flying speed, the rolling heat washing over her already stung. In a heat that could melt steel, the demonic beast had no time even to struggle before it became a ball of fire and crashed to the ground.
Looks like they finished it. Seems I'm the only one who didn't do much.
Wendy, standing in for Nightingale as the prince's temporary guard, pursed her lips as she watched the green flame rising in the distance.
If it were up to me, I'd hope none of you ever has to take the field.
Roland kept his hands behind back stance, feigning ease. Yet he knew in his heart, without the witches reinforcing the line today, facing a hybrid that could leap the wall, the militia would surely have fallen into disarray. Even Nanawa had come to the foot of the wall. Under Baron Tigu's protection, she was swiftly healing the wounded. It was the first time Roland had openly shown a witch's power before the entire militia, and the result heartened him. Nanawa, called the healing angel in the ranks, had plainly raised the witch's standing to a new height. After Anna and Nightingale joined forces on the wall to kill the first hybrid, cheers had even broken out in the crowd.
Of course, I know not everyone can be entirely easy about this, but a situation like this is already rare. With this first consensus inside the militia, my next plans will be far easier to carry out.
Suddenly, the musket fire on the wall grew sparse. Roland noticed the demonic beasts withdrawing from the wall one after another. They were retreating? He could hardly believe his eyes. Just then, a ray of light pierced the thick clouds overhead and spilled onto the ground. Then a second, a third. Soon the grey sky was pierced full of holes by thousands upon thousands of rays, all merging into one, dazzling beyond compare. The earth suddenly brightened. The day the sun rises again is the day the months of demons end. A brief hush fell over the wall. Then, a tidal wave of cheering swept across the border defense line. Little by little, the townsfolk came out of their houses and joined the shouting. For this long-lost sunlight, for passing the winter alive, for their prince they cheered and leapt. All the voices gathered at last into one great torrent, resounding through the whole of Border Town. Release That Witch. Episode 89. The Celebration Part 1. This year, Border Town was utterly unlike the years before. In years past, when the months of demons ended, one had to wait another month in Longsong Stronghold's slums for the snow to fully melt before setting foot on the road home. And back in town, what greeted them was mostly a shambles. Houses untended for months stood ruined. Flimsy wooden cabins had long been crushed by snow. Some townsfolk's homes even harbored demonic beasts, cupboards and tables bitten to pieces, hay and rags dragged into the corners, plainly taken as nests. They usually spent a week repairing the houses and replacing moldy, waterlogged furniture. As for the lingering stench of rot, the residents here were used to it. But this year, Border Town looked brand new. The snow was quickly swept away, and before every door hung the colored paper flags His Highness had handed out. Seen from afar, the drab, dilapidated little town had turned colorful, the flags of every hue mingling into a sea of flowers. Everyone ran about spreading the word. On the first day after the months of demons, His Highness would hold a grand celebratory ball in the square. Anyone could come, no coins required, and there would even be free food. A ball, why? That was a social occasion for the high nobility. They had only ever heard of it from well-traveled city merchants, and even those merchants could never take part. By their telling, it wasn't something money alone could buy an invitation to. And His Highness was letting everyone attend?
Your Highness, this really isn't a good idea. We have no band here and no dance leaders who will keep the ball's rhythm. Besides, in a backwater like this, even the nobles may not know how to dance. Your subjects will only make a mess of it all.
The chief knight tried to dissuade him. Back in the king's city, Carter had been to a ball exactly once, held by a marquis for his daughter's birthday. Elegant strings and stirring drums had sounded by turns. The ladies danced gracefully to the lilting music, and when the drums rose, the men showed off quick, powerful steps, spins and stamps, marrying motion to the beat. During the rests, servants threaded through the crowd with wine and refreshments, and the men picked out the ladies they fancied. When the final tune played, they mustered their courage and asked for a dance, and the lucky ones had further romance after the ball dispersed. Carter sighed. Young as he was then, he had failed to ask the girl he fancied, but that elegant, romantic atmosphere lingered in his memory to this day.
Swap those graceful nobles for these village louts who deal with stones and beasts every day. Heavens, I can't even picture it.
Dance leaders? We have them. Iron Axe and the militia.
Roland directed the militia to tear down the stone statues and gallows standing in the square.
That Mojin?
Carter stared blankly. As captain of the musket team, Iron Axe had finally earned the chief knight's recognition through the months of demons, and the foreigner label was no longer mentioned. But the man was still of the Mojin people. How could he possibly know the courtesies of the mainland kingdoms? Roland smiled mysteriously.
Because what I'm holding isn't a ball in the usual sense. You'll see when the time comes.
There wasn't much to prepare, mainly clearing the obstacles from the square and building a great woodpile at its center. Beside the pile, brick counters were set up for roasting food. Yes, this was the celebratory ball Roland had slapped together on a whim, a cross between a bonfire party and an outdoor barbecue. How to strengthen the people's identification with the place they lived had long been a question the prince pondered earnestly. Nationalism, folkism, for country villagers who had worked for their lord all their lives and couldn't read a single character, such things were far too abstruse. Only their property and kin were worth their care. The more backward, the more short-sighted, that is a law of civilization's growth. In the end, a civilization becomes as great as its thoughts, Roland agreed deeply. But that did not mean spiritual construction could be neglected. The victory celebration was one of the reforms he had worked out. In fact, he found it hard to comprehend that this world had no celebration at all after surviving the months of demons. The yearly invasion of demonic beasts was like a natural disaster. To defeat such evil was naturally worth writing into the annals. So, he decreed, the first day after the months of demons would be named Victory Day. In every territory belonging to him, that day would not only be a public rest, celebrations of every kind would be held. Keep it up 3 or 4 years, and it would become a tradition. handed down through the territory. And little by little, his subjects would come to feel that they truly were different from the people under other lords. Before midday, the square was already packed. Militiamen formed a ring, holding everyone back beyond the woodpile.
Free food is still quite the draw. At least half the town has come. The pity is the square is a little small. Apart from the ring of open ground around the woodpile, over 1,000 people are practically shoulder to shoulder, hardly any room to move. Some children have even climbed onto the nearest rooftops to peek at the middle of the square. Well, it's the first celebration. Some shortcomings are inevitable.
Roland judged the time about right and mounted the platform to give his address. This was his second public speech in the square, and his nerves were far steadier than the first time.
Good midday, my subjects. I am Roland Wimbledon, 4th Prince of the Kingdom of Grey Castle.
He chose the same opening as last time, but the effect was utterly different. Before his words had even fallen, fervent cries burst from the crowd.
Long live His Highness the Prince. Long live His Highness.
My chest feels warm. This time I didn't plant any stooges. The militia and the crowd are cheering of their own accord. Achievement and contentment fill my heart.
When the cries ebbed a little, he pressed his hands downward.
The months of demons are over. Thanks to the militia's valiant fighting, the demonic beasts never crossed the wall by a single step. Border Town has defeated a dreadful enemy at a trifling cost. And this proves that as long as we stand together, even without Long Song Stronghold's charity, we can stand firm on this land. They try to threaten this town with grain, to bend us with hunger and cold, and today's victory tells them all of it was in vain.
That's right. I never want to go back to that place. With His Highness, we didn't go hungry a single day this winter. No more of their extortion at last. Your Highness is merciful.
Riding the crowd's surging mood, Roland went on loudly.
Let us celebrate this splendid, glorious victory. This is a day worth remembering. I declare, from now on, the first day after the months of demons shall be called Victory Day. This celebratory ball is held for exactly that. My subjects enjoy this day to the fullest. Now let the ball begin!
Torches were thrown into the grease-smeared woodpile. With a whoop, the flame leapt up and in an instant set the whole square alight with excitement. Release That Witch. Episode 90. The Celebration Part 2. 6 whole pickled oxen were carted to the bonfire, and if the militia hadn't escorted the carts, Roland suspected the eager crowd would have carved the oxen clean before they ever got through. This was also the entire stock of his castle's cellar. Thinking that he would have no stake until the next merchant ship arrived, Roland felt his heart weep. To make this celebration a success, he had truly emptied his coffers. The royal chef brought from the capital was responsible only for the seasoning and watching the fire. The roasting itself fell to 6 of the strongest men in the militia. An iron rod went in at each ox's mouth, and the carcasses were set on the brick stands by the fire. The flame blazed. Even 2 or 3 meters away, you could feel the heat rolling off it. Soon the hides began to sizzle, fat beading from the pores, giving off a mouth-watering aroma. Of course, the crowd couldn't be left waiting with nothing to watch. At Roland's signal, Iron Axe led a squad of militiamen onto the ground. The splendid, intricate dances of the court would never suit an occasion like this without long training. You couldn't even remember the moves, let alone show off graceful posture. To be simple to learn while letting everyone cut loose, the dance of the Sand People clearly fit the common folk's taste far better. Iron Axe and his men stood hands on hips, one arm linked through the arm of the companion to the right, forming ring within ring, arrayed in 2 circles around the fire. As the accompaniment struck up, that is, several horns, high and low, they began moving clockwise. With every step, the other foot kicked forward, and a shout went up with it.
Ha-hey! Ha-hey!
This is what you call dance leaders? Does this even count as dancing?
Of course it counts. And it's simple to remember the militia mastered the steps in a quarter of an hour last night. Want to go up and try?
Carter shook his head in refusal. He only felt something inside him shatter. With a clang, "Farewell, fair maiden of my heart. Farewell, bittersweet memories of youth." The other militiamen began to clap, following the dancers' steps, each round of kicks bringing a round of applause. The irresistible rhythm carried the crowd along, and one by one they joined in the clapping. As the clapping quickened, Iron Axe and his men spun faster and higher until the ring of people began to show signs of breaking apart. Before long, one man stumbled and fell, dragging a whole group down with him, and the spinning came to an abrupt halt. The crowd froze, but the malicious applause never faltered. If anything, it grew like a storm of rain.
Did everyone see clearly? Who wants to try? If you fall, that round is over. Everyone who joins the dance gets a share of sweet, delicious honey roast meat. The longer you last, the bigger your piece.
Iron Axe helped up the fallen man and shouted into the crowd. Had the invitation come from nobles or great houses, the townsfolk might not have leapt at it deep down. They knew those folk stood high above, treating commoners like grass, and going back on a promise was common practice. But seeing the militiamen, the familiar neighbors of their daily lives, waving them in and cheering them on, one after another could no longer hold back. Once there was a first, a second, and a third soon followed. A new round of the dance began only this time. Most of the dancers were the townsfolk themselves. Simple as the moves were, everyone reveled in them, and with honey roast meat as the prize, every participant gave their very best. This was exactly the scene Roland had hoped to see. Besides the roast meat, there was bread, fish cakes, and ale, to be handed out one after another once the beef was served. The celebration would last into the night, but Roland would not stay the whole time. He put Carter in charge of safety on the ground, left the closing address to the assistant minister, and departed. He had a private victory feast to attend in the castle's back garden. When evening fell, the backyard was still brightly lit. As in the center of the square, a bonfire burned here too. The difference was that the chicken for roasting had all been cut into pieces. Seasonings and oil were self-served, wholly imitating the style of an outdoor barbecue. The novel do-it-yourself way of eating enchanted the witches, and in Roland's eyes, it made for a rare spectacle. Anna, for instance, rubbed her chicken pieces with seasoning and then wrapped them straight in green fire, turning out a fragrant, perfectly roasted piece in an instant. Nightingale showed off her unbelievable knife work, the table knife flickering in and out of sight in her hand, dancing up and down around the chicken, and when she peeled it open, the bones dropped out whole. And of course there was wine. The bottled wine brought from Willowtown clearly suited the lady's palates better than ale. Lightning drank half a bottle by herself. Roland wanted to say that minors were forbidden to drink, but she floated in mid-air hugging the bottle, and dissuasion was impossible to deliver. He thought about it and let it go. Halfway through the barbecue, Roland felt a touch of drunkenness. Leaning back in his chair, watching these laughing, chattering girls, he felt an immense contentment. This was the life a prince ought to have, he thought, and the same went for the witches. Blessed with rare powers and looks, they should never have been quarry for the hunt. In the era before he crossed over, they would have been dazzling center-stage figures wherever they went. And all he could do for them now was give them an ordinary life within this small square of land. Just then, Lightning floated down, sat right onto Roland's lap, and before he could react, planted a kiss on his cheek, quick as lightning. Swift as the motion was, every one of the witches caught it. She flew off giggling, and seeing Anna, Nightingale, and Wendy staring at her in astonishment, she waved a hand in explanation.
By the customs of the fjords, at a feast celebrating victory, a woman may offer the chief a kiss on her own initiative. Father always had me kiss him. Doesn't Grey Castle have such a custom?
Of course it doesn't. Lightning, you're drunk. Get yourself back to bed this instant.
No way. When I was at sea, I drank against the crew all the time. I never lost once.
Roland had no choice but to turn to the witches for help. He looked at Wendy. She nodded, rolled up a downward draft, and blew lightning out of the air. Just before she hit the ground, Wendy stepped forward and caught the girl in her arms, and ignoring her non-stop protests, walked straight toward the castle.
Pay her no mind, she's just had too much. Keep eating, all of you. There's still dessert to come.
Roland felt the air turn awkward at once, especially Anna's gaze on him. which sent a chill rising from the soles of his feet. Only Nanawa was entirely unaffected, still earnestly roasting the chicken wing in her hands, as if nothing had happened at all. When the bonfire gradually died down, Roland had Nightingale escort Nanawa home, then went to the well himself to wash his face with cold water, likewise making ready for bed. He took the little episode lightly in his eyes. Lightning was still an underage child. But walking up to the door of his third-floor bedroom, the prince's heart gave a violent thump. Leaning against the doorframe was Anna,